Hi everyone, this is Ryan, or Prolific. With the introduction of the new developer for Grey Havens, and a big welcome to him, Krabby the Kid, and with all the recent changes being made to greedy bashing and the discussion around them, I felt like now would be a good time to bring up an important issue that has been continuing to plague puzzles such as Swordfight and Rumble. For purposes of this video, I will mainly be discussing sword fighting. As you all know, I'm a big swordfight degen, and it's all I play. Sublime and under 1 year, by the way. It's the puzzle that I enjoy the most, and where I think that modding causes the biggest problems to the game. Now, I'm not oblivious to the fact that this has obviously been brought up before by Quasars, and I'll be using some of his footage in this video. Big thanks to him for that. And people have also emailed in, but obviously nothing's been done about it, so here we are. And just a quick little disclaimer before I get started here. I do not engage in, support or condone any of the following terms of service breaking activities I will discuss in this video. And this is not created to disrespect or create any harassment towards Grey Havens or any of its employees. If you're thinking about doing it, just don't. Thanks. I would encourage everyone viewing to watch the video in its entirety before coming to any conclusions, as you will certainly gain a deeper insight into why this is such a serious problem for the game, not just for sword fighters, but for everyone. First up, what is modding or speed hacking? For those of you who don't know, there are cheats available for puzzles that allow players to play at greater speeds than what are intended by the developers. For example, a player modding in Swordfight is able to drop pieces by using the space bar at a faster, sometimes much faster rate than what was intended by the developers. They can even choose what speed they play at. For example, they can choose to go at 110% speed, 200% speed, 300% speed, whatever they want. Why is this an issue? At surface level, it appears to just be an issue in Swordfight and Rumble, in addition to the ability to be used in Cursed Isles for forging and for Treasure Hall and some other puzzles. Now, going back to Swordfight and Rumble, the speed at which a player plays at can greatly determine whether they lose or win a game. In fact, simply being just one piece ahead in the piece queue in sword fighting against an opponent similar in skill can win you the game a lot of the time. Modders can abuse this to the point where even if you play a game perfectly and go as fast as humanly possible, you will always be behind in pieces and you will get hit with so many attacks that it becomes near impossible for you to win. Now, what effect has this had in sword fighting? Modding has had a huge impact on the brawl table and how people approach it. Every person you face on the SF table may be modding. Depending on how experienced you are and how close attention you pay and how fast your opponent is playing, you may never know for certain. As you may know, I'm never off the SF table, but there's plenty of times where I'm not sure or I've been wrong about whether someone is modding or not. You may have noticed a large uptick in people providing sword fighting streams via Twitch over the last year, including myself. This is no pure coincidence. Naturally fast and skillful players are forced to stream games in order to avoid the harassment that comes with being labelled a modder. Big tournaments are plagued with green accounts and even established pirates joining and cheating their way to big prizes, especially in familiar tournaments. This is no different in wagered games, where streaming is almost a requirement now to be able to play them. Many low-ranked players are not open to the idea of wagering, playing tournaments or even playing the puzzle at all due to the prevalence of these cheaters. Players' excitement for upcoming SF and Rumble fan tourneys are crushed to the ground upon the realisation that they won't have a chance anyway due to these players. I hear yourself thinking, why should I care? I don't even play a sword fight. Well, you should, as modding has had many devastating effects in the game as a whole, outside of the first world problems I just discussed. If you look beyond the surface, it has had a huge impact on the game as a whole, outside of me being salty that I got modded by some guy with a saber. First and most importantly of all, in my opinion, is on the player base. I could not even begin to list off the amount of players that have told me that they're quitting or slowly drifting off the game due to their frustrations with modding. Outside of blockading, voyaging and doctarting, there is a large community of players which enjoy PvP puzzles such as SF and Rumble more than anything else in the game. Now, it's one thing getting beaten in a familiar tournament by a god tier player who could probably still attain ultimate whilst playing blindfolded, But it's another thing when that same god tier player gets hit at 3 times the speed they can attain normally without breaking the game's rules and compromising all of their credibility. Modding introduces a ceiling of skill unattainable by any legitimate player in the game, and it completely ruins all incentive to continue advancing as a player and trying to beat that guy you feel you went 0-22, considering even they could never physically come out on top versus that green alt hitting them with a strike every single turn. It's really sad to me how many players have lost every last po of their hard-earned stash that they've accumulated over the time they've played the game, just someone they've only just realised has cheated them after the fact. It's easy to get back up and play again when you've been defeated by someone with superior skill, but incredibly insulting and frustrating when it's been done by someone who has cheated you out of all of your po. This inevitably leads to dwindling player numbers, and at the very least, resentment towards the game and a distrust of other players on the table. Which leads on into my second point, RMT. RMT is one of the biggest issues facing the game to those who run it and always has been. By taking advantage of modding, even relatively low skill players are able to blow past the legitimate competition with ease in wagered games and tournaments, therefore being able to rake up a large amount of po in a short period of time, especially in sword fighting, where the most large wagers and tournaments take place. This allows players to sell this quickly earned po via illegitimate methods before they are banned. Furthermore, this just gives a huge incentive for these players to just create a new account and do the same thing at an opportune time, therefore just encouraging these cheaters and ban evaders to return to the game to cheat more players out of their hard-earned po for a quick buck. However, modding is not just an issue with the selling of po via RMT methods. As I mentioned before, getting cheated out of po or items will either cause a player to quit or build resentment towards the game. Do you think these players would be so willing to buy doubloons and support the game which has neglected fixing this issue? Unlikely. This will ultimately drive more players towards RMT methods in order to regain some of their lost po, damaging the game, lowering the valuable support it continues to receive from players' wallets, and leading to more players getting banned, yet again lowering and demoralising the player base, and potentially leading to further people taking up the act of cheating or RMTing, potentially both, creating a vicious cycle. Modding is, on one hand, a very similar issue to botting, at least on this. However, I would argue that perhaps it is even worse, due to the problems I have just mentioned, not necessarily taking hold while botting, at least in such great effect in which they do with modding. Now, you may think that cheating in this fashion would yield you an insta-ban, and yeah, I wish you were right. However, there is little to no detection for modding, and in fact, the last cheat detection for sword fighting was almost 15 years ago. Some love and attention desperately needs to be given to YPP's potentially most popular puzzle. I'm not asking for new sword patterns, balance changes to certain swords that have been dominant since the dawn of time, though that would be incredible. I am simply begging for a fix to this issue, which at best makes SF a borderline unplayable puzzle, and at worst a detriment to the game and its community as a whole. I can also confirm from what I've been told by multiple talented programmers with knowledge in this area that it is not a complicated fix whatsoever. May I also add that a fix for this has been offered to Grey Havens by multiple community members, and every time they have been turned down or ignored. One positive thing I would like to note is, in my personal opinion, I think modding has been going down in prevalence over the last while. However, anyone can still do it at any time, and I would argue that this is not good enough in a game receiving thousands of dollars from players' wallets. Also, for any sword fighters who would like my opinion on certain players, whether I think they're modding or not, what my opinion is on them, you can just ask me in game and I'll be happy to share my experience with you, in case you're worried that they're cheating you out of your po like so many people probably have done to you in the past. That's all I'd like to say on this for now. I would greatly appreciate any input in this from the player base or from the OMs or devs. Thank you very, very much for listening, and peace.